Morning, Kevin. How are you?
Good morning, Peter. Nice to talk to you.
Morning, Kevin.
Morning to you. How are you? Are you all ready?
Yeah, good indeed. How are you?
All good to go, and kind of all reflecting on the last time we met face to face, which was the
Possibly the last business event of the
6th.
year.
Yeah,
It's on the ground.
6th of August, right when we were right at the beginning of this, and now we're sort of just coming out of the end. So we're hopefully bookending this a little bit for business owners.
Yeah, that would be good. I think if we can step forward out of it now, then it'll make the world a lot easier for us to move forward. People logging in at the moment. So, morning to everyone. So how have you been through lockdown then?
Perfectly fine. Staff have all worked well from home. Nobody wants to go back to the office. I haven't been driving anywhere near as much, but still getting the same value, just been using Zoom. And that's, I guess, what most businesses have done, haven't they? Well, at least in the service industry anyway.
Excellent.
So everything we do is conceptual, you know, we're selling concepts rather than anything else.
And today, we'll have people logging on for the next 5 minutes or so, but we'll kick off in about 3 minutes. So people are joining us now, so morning to everyone as they join.
So tell me about the progress shed. What's that?
So the progress shed is our office here. So we've got a variety of businesses in this location.
Oh, it's the location, right? Okay, cool.
Yes. So, you know, because I have an actual coach practice here, and then we've also got a recruitment company and a marketing company and a headhunting service and Gauge and Grow. So we've got a variety of different businesses located here. But these sessions are basically from the progress shed, mainly because most great businesses were born in sheds.
Great. Sounds like a little hub of creative energy and activity.
That's the idea. So these sessions are really designed to add value to any business, whether whatever they're doing, and introduce some new ideas, new thinking.
Yeah, sure.
And push things forward.
Happy to help in any way.
So on that front, we've been having fun, getting some great speakers over the last couple of months, and we've got some great speakers lined up as well. So,
I won't let you down.
So thank you for joining us, and
a pleasure.
I think it's going to be a while before we get back to being able to have face-to-face sessions. So having online sessions, we felt was a good step forward.
Yeah, indeed.
But in a minute or so, I'll do introductions and then pretty much hand over to you. And then everyone's logging on now, so they are seeing us having our little interaction. But we'll record the session and then that'll go out and be on the YouTube channel shortly. And then you've got somewhere in the region of an hour. So
I mean, I've got a number of kind of in the draw concept that I'll share with the business owners today. There's the 4 different concepts, each representing one of the letters from the word draw. And it's your call, you know, I'm more than happy to be guided by you. I can pause between each letter for breath and, you know, invite questions, or I can just go through the whole thing and then see how we get on at the end.
I'd probably say go through the whole thing, and then at the end we'll have time for questions. And
cool, no problem.
So, the main mechanism for questions through this session will be into the chat box.
Oh, okay. Will you be diving into that then?
Yeah, so we'll keep the chat box monitored, and then we'll feed the questions through as they come through, and we will, subject to what they are, we'll probably just unmute people and let them have a quick conversation with you.
Okay.
Have that interaction, if that makes sense.
No problem, yeah.
Excellent. So at that point, it's pretty much time to get started. So I will start the recording.
You'll be handing over to me to load up my slides, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. So
Just morning, Kevin.
Hello there. Hello.
let's actually do this. So I will press record, then I'll make you host, and then I'll hand over. I'll do a brief introduction, then it's all yours. Right, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Progress Share, and welcome to the session today, where we have Kevin Wheelan joining us, who will give us some insights into some mechanisms for using your money to the best effect to generate your wealth. The world's been progressing over the last few weeks, and we seem to be coming back to life. Things are getting busier, places are getting busier, business is getting busier. You can actually go out for a drink in the pub now if you choose. Isn't that refreshing? On the business side, what does your next 90 days look like? It's very much a case of actually the next 90 days is running through into the whole of Q3, and your plan should be in place, and they should really be setting up to create this drive, this continuation right the way through into 2020. The changed normal is here to stay. How long for? Well, your guess is mine. We have had notification from the school that the Christmas fair will not be going ahead. So they've already stated that it's going to be affecting things that far into the future. So planning now and keeping that momentum, keeping that drive moving forward is going to be huge. So keeping your foot on the accelerator, keeping your business moving forward, keeping focus, incredibly important. Part of that is making sure that your success drives through. These sessions, as requested, we're going to continue with. As always, if you can invite people in, I know we get a lot of re-watchers, which is really great, but having more people live is also really great. This week we've got Kevin, who I'll be handing over to in just a minute. Next week we actually have Adrian Webster of Polar Bear Pirates. If anyone hasn't read this book, it's actually a brilliant look at the way businesses and people can move forward and the things that get in the way and hold them back. And one of the things he's really going to be focusing on next week is into the tiny noticeable things, the TNTs, that really make a difference. And he's a great speaker, so looking forward to that session. Kevin last joined us at the Business Growth Summit, which I believe several of you are at, which was that the last live business event of the year? Who knows? But he's graciously agreed to come back and join us today to give us some more insights. Really about getting you thinking on things that move you forward. So at that point, I'll hand over to Kevin. Kevin, the stage is yours. You have control. So I will shut off my video and shut off my sound.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's Kevin Wheelan from Wealth Builders here. Yes, you're absolutely right. It was the last time I did anything live was at the Business Growth Summit on the 6th of March in Bath. So, and since then, really, I've been focusing and pivoting my business to do everything online. And of course, like most of us, we probably almost zoomed to death, but it's been a very useful tool, hasn't it, for all of us? So I hope that I provide some value to you today. And what I want to talk to you about today is about really putting ourselves and reminding ourselves we're in a unique position as directors of our own limited companies to choose almost like a lifestyle choice of how we draw money. And I use that word advisedly, as you'll see in a moment. And I'm going to talk about the most tax efficient way that you can not just take money and extract money from the business, but make yourself safer as well. for the most part, when people get into business, you know, there's some kind of a freedom on the back end of that. And that freedom is to be independent, to be able maybe one day to walk away very wealthy from business. But most people walk away, regrettably, quite weary. And as a consequence, you know, there's putting all our eggs in a business basket can be difficult. So what I'm going to do is share with you some insights, how you can help your business, help yourself, and help your family all at the same time. And this is a new way to look at drawing money from your business. Now, my business, my primary business anyway, is called Wealth Builders, and our focus is sort of what it says on the tin, is to help busy business owners. Well, I know that feeling very well. My father died as a busy business owner and didn't take care of almost all of the things I'm going to share with you that perhaps you might want to do. And so my focus is to create, build, and protect the wealth of business owners. And I've been doing that for best part of a decade now. Now, we all know Rishi. Actually, you know, the last time I was quite disparaging of Rishi, given what I'm about to share with you that he did. However, I'm going to take my hat off to him and say they did a great job, didn't they, in supporting business owners in this difficult time? And it has been difficult times, but they've spent billions. And of course, that money is going to have to be paid back. There's no gifts here. And we all know where that's going to come, is going to come from stealth measures that will come in the future. And one of those, of course, as we've seen as business owners, one of the most precious commodities we have from a tax planning point of view as a business owner is that entrepreneur's relief, that opportunity we have to sell our businesses and pay 10% tax, effectively a capital gains tax. And that's been slashed from 10 million to 1 million. And so it's really important as you're thinking about your exit strategies in the future, you get a sense of how then, if you can't store up all the value to get a massive, massive tax reduction when you sell your business, the most precious thing you could learn now perhaps is to draw money from your business in a more creative way. If you remember, I said the title of my presentation, A New Way to Look at Drawing Money from Your Business. So tax efficiency and how to draw money from your business. Well, there are 4 elements to this. And for those of you who know me, I know Jim James is on the call, who knows me very well. It's actually part of our Wealth Builder program. And hats off to you, Jim. Always nice to see you, and such a keen sharer as well of all things to help business owners. So the 4 elements to my Wealth Builder Draw package, the most tax efficient package I know for a business owner to be thinking. The first, the D, is for director's pension. The second is relevant life. I'll be covering all of these in turn. Third is how you create, build, and bank assets from a recurring income point of view. And fourthly, you know, business owners often put things off, don't they? We know you put off things like wills and trusts and powers of attorney, but also sometimes we put off easy things to do, like our health, like our retirement planning. And you'd be surprised to know that the taxman actually gives us an incentive to take care of ourselves. More of that in a few minutes. So just quickly, not too much to focus on here. This is about helping you, not blowing my trumpet, but 2 things that I think is worth noting here from my perspective. As a business owner myself, just like you, actually, interestingly enough, my new normal is my staff have all been working from home and loving it, and telling me they kind of would rather work from home, and they seem to be more productive that way. We have our weekly huddle on Zoom, as probably most people are doing, every Monday morning, but it seems like my team are really happy. The key thing, though, to recognize, I think, from me, is the focus on what I call recurring income. And that recurring income is precious to me and is the most important thing that I help business owners do. I won't be focusing on that today because I spent time on that on the Southwest Business Summit in March. So I don't want to give the same presentation. I want to give you a twist or a variation, something of value. But just so you know, for credibility purposes, I have 6 individual businesses, all revolving around wealth, generating recurring income. Whether I turn up, whether I'm on Zoom or not, of over $1 million a year. And that's a valuable business. Now, at the moment, I'm not intending to sell it, but I could sell it for life-changing sums, or I could keep it and enjoy the lifestyle that I've got. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. Now, yes, you know, I've got spare time, so I do write, and I've written 3 books, and you're welcome to any of them apart from the last one, because technically I don't own that one. That's owned together with Brad Sugars of Action Coach. Obviously, we have a lot in common with Action Coach, but those are my 3 books, and you're welcome to 2 of them anyway. All you need to do is just reach out. Let's talk about the D. The D stands for Director's Pension, and the Director's Pension is the best kept secret for business owners. What it allows you to do is get tax relief, tax exemptions, and build a tax-free pot that can serve you, your business, and your family of up to £1 million completely tax-free. And it's just like running a business. So if you can run a business, you can run a director's pension. There's a technical term for the director's pension. Like all things pension, they're a bit gray and a bit dreary. So I'll try and cut through that if I can by kind of describing it in your language. So this is what I mean. So this is my acronym, another acronym like DRAW, the director's pension, and I'll just touch on some of those things. Kind of whistle stop. I don't want to spend too much time on any one individual thing, but just to get the idea that having or considering having a director's pension could be a massive, massive win for you and your business. Well, the first thing, like a business owner, you know, the person who makes the decision about what's in your tax-free trust fund, tax-free, remember, I'm going to keep coming back to that, is you decide exactly what to do. So like a business, you know, you're the director of a business in a director's pension, which you'll see later is called a SSAS, or small self-administered scheme, technical language, but really quite easy to decipher. Then you become the legal owner and operator on the decisions around your pension. So you don't have to be a pensions expert, you just have to decide what you want to do. And most business owners I've ever met kind of know what they want, and they don't often want where their pensions come from. They don't like pensions so much, they don't like the stock market so much, they don't like somebody else deciding. They want to be in control. And that's one of the hallmarks of being a business, I guess. Now, the other issue that I think is very precious to me is this idea of passing on a legacy. So if you can create a intergenerational tax-free trust that moves from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, always tax-free, then this is a very powerful tool that it can help you while you're alive, but it also is a very, very solid asset to pass on to the next generation. And that's very important, particularly when often these days, I guess not so many businesses are being passed on to children. You know, they don't want necessarily to be a business owner. They may want something else, or they may want to be in a different business altogether. So a tax-free trust fund to leave to the next generation and still have access to it now, pretty powerful. Now, I'm an economist by training. You may notice that, so I love a good ROI. And there are 4 here. And in simple terms, with a director's pension, you can buy stuff, which means you can buy land, you could buy commercial property, you could buy the premises in which you're in, all tax-free. You could, I think we're going to see a big change in the way the world is alters on the high street. There's going to be opportunities, and many of our clients are poised for that, to be able to, you know, buy old premises that they can turn into residential apartments. So there's a whole host of buying opportunities, and the facilitation even of residential properties all possible within the strategy called buy. Now, I appreciate this is whistle stop, so you know I could do a whole webinar just on what you can buy, but including things like gold, stock market investments at a fraction of the price, because a director's pension is a wholesale product for business owners, not a retail product for retail people. So consequently, you can massively drive down the cost of investing, and more on costs in a moment. Bridging means you become a bank. And as a banker, you can lend money, and you can lend money to third parties. And that could be other businesses, or it could be For property projects, if you like property, as I said earlier, you could act like a bridging company, get a first legal charge on a property. It's probably our second most popular strategy, where our clients will lend money to help business owners do, property owners rather, do great work, get 12% typically on that money, and get a first legal charge as well. Much better than the stock market, you could argue. The borrow strategy is the most popular strategy, and that strategy says that you can borrow money yourself from your own director's pension, which means you can essentially help your business. Now, who wouldn't want a tax-free trust fund they could borrow from for situations like COVID on the negative side, but situations like growth on the positive side? And you can definitely do that. And the fourth strategy is what I call the bank strategy. Many business owners, the average age of a business owner in the UK who sells a business actually is 57. And those who are over 55 can get access basically to 25% of their money plus the borrow strategy, which is 50%. So you can get 75% of your money out. And who says pensions aren't accessible? The other ROI I love is education. I call that a return on intellect. And one of the values of education is you can use director's pension because it's such a powerful tool to learn new strategies like the bridge strategy, or like buying commercial property or commercial to residential property. There's a whole host of people in our community. We have a community of directors who are trustees of something like 4,000 now. And therefore, there's so much going on inside our community called the SSAS Alliance. And in that community, people are sharing what they're doing that are making such great returns. And what's very powerful about that is you can compound those returns up tax-free. So if you can get 10, 12% on your money, compound that up over a number of years, it's significantly higher than suffering from the kind of ebb and flow of a stock market. And we've all seen how devastating that can be in many years, 2000, 2008, 2020. So there's always massive, massive volatility in the stock market. And you can reduce that volatility and therefore reduce your risk by having a better education about what's possible to do. Business owners, we're all concerned about costs, aren't we? In value, I suppose, more so than cost. And when it comes to costs, a director's pension is an administration tool. You are essentially in control of the pension. So all you really need is a bookkeeper, essentially on one side, to manage that relationship to report to HMRC, which they need to do in order to keep your benefits tax-free. So the cost typically for our average director's pension client is about 1,500 quid a year. Average value they've got is about 400. Compare that to conventional pensions with funds under management, advisory fees, trustee fees, custodian fees, often 1.5 to 2%. So a 400,000 pension is going to cost 7-8 grand, and a director's pension 1,500. So a lot of people think that because this is the best kept secret, somehow it must be expensive. But my experience, and we do thousands of these, it's not. It's just a best kept secret. And one, the industry would rather you pay money to the industry rather than keep that money yourself. I'm a big fan for the directors and for the entrepreneurs who are taking the risk, not building the wealth of the financial services industry. Anyway, I get off that soapbox for now. But, you know, the director's pension is super tax efficient. So no income tax, no corporation tax, no CGT, no inheritance tax. And any contributions you make are tax relievable. In other words, you get the corporation tax back. And some interesting news here for those of you with successful businesses. While the typical contribution that can be made into a pension is 40,000 per year per person, a director's pension allows you, if you've got a multi-member scheme, and you can have up to 11 in the pension scheme. It's like a mini corporate pension for SMEs. So 11 people, well, that's, you know, quite a reasonable family business or a reasonably big family. But what that means is two things. One is you can contribute up to $500,000 in any year in something called the general unallocated fund. And that's a huge tax benefit. and also the lifetime allowance, which is $1 million. You can start to build lifetime allowances for multi-members. So in my case, I've got my SSAS with me, my wife. Now increasingly, I've got my 3 kids involved. So that gives me a lifetime allowance with 5 people of 5 million, not 1 million. And that's the plan, is to build tax-free trust fund that we can use for £5 million. Anyway, tax efficiency, absolutely critical. What I mean by open access is, as I mentioned in the borrow strategy, is that money is in a pot that my business can use. So I can lend that money to my business for any purpose for the business. Whatever the business is, the money can be used. If it's a marketing business, I can spend money on marketing. If it's any business, I can spend money on staff. If it's a property business, I can spend money on property, including using the money to buy residential property as well, as many of our clients have done. And I mentioned it's more than one. So, you know, the director's pension is for up to 11 people, so they can build collaborations, which means bigger pots, which means bigger loan back, which means more power, which means greater compounding. And we've definitely seen business owners who've doubled the value of the pension it took them 20 odd years to build in work in a matter of a few short years, because they've got complete control over all of that money and build those relationships wherever they want. Now, the key thing then, and it's technical language, the S stands for SAS, small self-administered scheme, wouldn't win any marketing prizes. Not a SIPP, self-invested personal pension. A SIPP is for a person. A SAS is for an SME. So a SIPP is for one, and a SAS is for, well, it can be one, but 2, 3, 4, and up to 11. And that's what gives it, you know, incredible additional power, because you've got those extra lifetime allowances as well. Well, I hope that's given you an insight into the power of the director's pension. And every accountant would tell you that putting money into a pension scheme is interesting, but maybe more interesting now that you would have complete control over what you did with that money, rather than think, well, I've got to stick it on the stock market. And I'm not really a fan of that. So there you go. That's a reminder and a summary of the director's pension. Now, the R in the strategy is relevant life. And as I pause for thought, I'll just take a slurp of my coffee while I tell you what on earth relevant life is. Well, relevant life, it's a concept, again, awkward language. It's not that life is irrelevant. It means it's a life assurance policy designed for directors. And the reason it's been designed for directors is because the industry knows that business owners often focus all of their energy in their business. And if the business ever goes wrong and the director dies, unfortunately, there can be little value left. And this is the challenge that happened to my father, who died with a business. The business was turning over good income. He was doing a great job, but he was doing a job. When he died, unfortunately, on North Sea oil rig, when he was 46 actually, he unfortunately did not protect the family because he thought he was immortal. He thought things would just carry on the way they were. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. The family didn't have protection. The business died. There was no life cover to pay off the mortgage. And the family were left not just grieving, but in a difficult financial situation. So one of the solutions that is possible is something called relevant life. So it's life cover just for directors. It's not for lay people again. Now, just as you can build £1 million tax-free in a pension scheme, the director's pension, it's quite common for us to be setting up £1 million tax-free for a director, so that if something happens to them, there's a sizable sum, essentially almost to replace the sale of the business or the value of the business. I'm using this figure as an example. I know some of you will have hugely successful businesses and some that are still on the way and might not be valued at these sort of figures yet. But just to give you a feeling, this is not uncommon for £1 million tax-free to be paid. Now, what's interesting is in here with relevant life, the premium is completely tax deductible, which means the taxman pays towards the cost of the premium. and there's no national insurance. The other value is it has to be by law in trust, so it's free of inheritance tax for the family, goes directly to them, doesn't have to go through a will, doesn't have to go through the complexity, whether you've made a will or you've done your powers of attorney or you have shareholder agreements. It goes directly straight to the family. And because it's a trust fund, the family can use that trust fund in any way they want, including borrowing from it to leave a debt on the next estate, so that it becomes almost like a loan fund for the family to use in the future, and therefore never actually accrues inside the family because it can be deemed to be a debt. No lifetime allowance, so doesn't affect lifetime allowance, whereas life cover that you take out or have in a big company, say you know, some of you running a business and running a job, any life cover in your business affects your life, and your job affects lifetime allowance. This does not, so it sits on top of lifetime allowance. And I've mentioned no BIK. I'm going to come on to BIK, or benefit in kind, because there's a whole host of opportunities for benefits in kind elimination, so you can gain a benefit personally but not pay the tax on it. Now that's a good skill to learn. I won't cover all of them, but I'll touch on some of them today. And typically then, because of the combination of no BIK, no insurance, no national insurance, premiums tax deductible, and it's the same life cover, it's, you know, same insurance companies really, typically the premium is 50% cheaper, which means if you think about it, either you get a really good price and you feel, you know, you've got good value, and maybe you might afford something you perhaps wouldn't have done before, or it allows you to have more cover for the family, you know, twice as much cover for the same price as if you take it down personally. So I hope you can see that this is another benefit uniquely for directors that you can set up if you choose to do so. Now I'm going to talk about assets now. I'm not going to talk today about building assets in your business. I've got a separate presentation on that, on how to create assets, how to create recurring income, which is the byproduct of the ownership of assets. It's income that flows and flows and flows. But I will spend a few minutes soon on the assets you can build outside of your business, so that you're supporting your business at the same time. However, having said that, the director's pension that I just mentioned a few minutes ago can buy, so in other words, you can buy tax-free and get the taxman to pay, which means, you know, corporation tax relief to buy business, which means, or buy property, which means everything's at least 20% cheaper simply because the taxman's paying. Anyway, offices, shops, industrial units, land, commercial to residential. So a whole host of opportunities that business owners can then not just create land and other assets, but create a rental income or a capital value from something that keeps all of that value tax-free, or you could use it as a facilitator. In this example, this picture you could see was one of my clients bought those 3 buildings, which were essentially commercial. He paid for that through his director's pension, and then transferred the value of that with, once he got planning permission to build apartments. I can't remember how many apartments now, 18, 20 apartments, then which was worth 2 million. Then that money or that property was then sold out into their business, their SPV or special purpose vehicle. So essentially it means the pension bought something in cash and got an incredible price, got the planning permission, got an uplift, and then sold it to themselves to give them the opportunity to build their wealth outside of their pension, but inside of their business. So this is how you combine the knowledge of assets with the knowledge of some of these skills to be able to choose where you want to build your wealth, in your business, out of your business, in something tax-free, as a diversifier or not. All of these choices are yours. And this is the guy who did that particular building. His name's Mark Stokes. Corporate background, now an experienced developer. 4 pensions were combined. That was Mark, his business partner, and their 2 wives, which gave them incredible value, and their gains have been huge. And he's the guy that basically doubled the pension within a few short years of having taken 25 years to do it. And so impressed was he with learning this that he wrote his own book. And what better advert for the concept than when your client writes a book well, saves me writing it, but also means, they're very powerful. And now we work together in the SSAS Alliance that I mentioned to you before. And the SSAS Alliance has now built a community of 4,000 people, all learning how to create extraordinary levels of compounding wealth, all tax-free. Anyway, let's talk about business owners again. Maybe you know this feeling. I know my dad did, and I'm always tempted to keep going backwards and keep putting my head above, which is why having 6 businesses forces me to be thinking in a helicopter view. But I understand the challenge of that tunnel vision, particularly in difficult times like now, when you're looking to pivot, you're looking to change the way you deliver value. And my experience in assets is business owners tend not to see them. Let me see if you can get this. So a business owner has got his eyes on the prize, or her eyes on the prize, and they're focused on the business and the business of doing the work in that business that they own. And pretty much, mostly, not in all cases, that's all they know. And that's a dangerous strategy, because one of anything is not independence, it's risk. So the skill in thinking about wealth and business, if that's the reason you want to be in business, and most business owners want to be paid handsomely for their blood, sweat, and years, it's not simply to run the business until you die. And that's what most people unfortunately do, because so few businesses are actually sold because they're so dependent on the business owner, and very few of them have created natural flows of recurring income. So do invite me back if you want to talk about how to create assets inside your company. But I'm going to have you imagine, if you would, that you as the business owner, the whole circle of wealth is your business. So in other words, go back and imagine that the wealth of you is everything you could do, of which the business is one part. And in my book that you'll get a copy of, should you choose to have it, there are 7 assets, and these are the 7. I won't spend any time on them in detail right now, but I will say that it's possible to create recurring income from 7 different assets, including the business, not exclusively the business. So you could create income from the home you live in. I'm not saying everybody should. I'm just saying the potential is there in the home to create value, whether it's to remortgage and take money out, invest it in another asset, whether it's to simply create an extension and let it out, or in some cases, people just simply let a room. For most people, though, there is no value there because we live in our homes, and rightly so. However, the potential is there. The pension, we've talked about the director's pension, which gives you the opportunity to invest in a whole raft of different things other than the stock market. And most people who are building their wealth in business essentially have a home they live in. They may or may not put money in a pension, and they might have some money in cash or in ISAs and whatever. And that's the sum total of their wealth. I'd like to invite you to cross the divide, cross the Rubicon, as it were, and move across to see the entrepreneurial pillars, the pillars that reflect the very essence of being an entrepreneur. So building a portfolio of property, the most popular asset in our community. So our business owners become property owners. That's commercial property, residential property, and there are at least 20 strategies, that can be learned and shared and learned very quickly through the power of collaboration. Intellectual property is a valuable asset. Most people would recognize that obviously through books, but membership courses, training programs, anything where you've developed a real powerful skill or a unique take or twist on something, you can turn that into a value, or at the very least you can create it to promote your business. There's a brilliant book called KPI, or Key Person of Influence, by Daniel Priestley, who talks at length about how you can create your own intellectual property, even if it's to serve the business by being a brilliant lead magnet, or expanding your reach by showing people your authority, hence the word author. There's authority in that, and that's important, which is why I think most good business owners will think about at some point putting that to print. Joint ventures means collaborating with others. So if you're weak on time, there's a whole methodology of building relationships with others where you can co-own and share in the value. I've talked about that very briefly with being a bank and lending money to third parties on what I call secured property loans, something you'd never see in a portfolio from an IFA, simply because, you know, if you take a line down the middle, the IFA deals with 1, 2, 3 home capacity pension investments. They don't touch, don't know, don't understand, and certainly cannot guide you onto how to build a portfolio of property, building IP, building joint ventures, and certainly can never help you build a thriving, robust, recurring income generating business. Anyway, enough of business. Hopefully you got a sense, and we recognize the danger that business owners will often feel they don't have time, but you know, it is possible, and we work with hundreds of business owners and help them create the time, leverage that time so they can create some other powerful income streams to diversify and give them more income than just what's in the business. And given independence of anything is important, independent of the economy, independent of whether you're ill or not ill, independent of whether you die or don't die, independent of what's happening inside your business. The value, I think, in having multiple strings to your bow, multiple streams of income, recurring income flowing into your life, gives you incredible safety and no sleepless nights and no worries, like we've seen many business owners experience in recent weeks and months. Okay, finally, put a smile on your face, a bit of doom and gloom there from me, sorry about that, is well-being. Now, what I mean by this is we know that directors will sometimes, you know, get caught up in the trap of the doingness, the busyness of business, and you know, might not see the time to do some things that are good for them. And there are many things you can do that will save national insurance and benefit in kind tax, or BIK. And BIK is just something, it's a kind of a tax value that's imputed whenever you gain a personal benefit from something in your business. And of course, we'll know about things like directors' loans and the value of those sorts of things, but maybe a few, and working from home, obviously, in COVID, or having your mobile phone bill paid for by your company, or going on business trips where you can enjoy them at the same time. However, maybe some lesser known things, which I think might be useful for you to know. One is your health. You know, the Inland Revenue recognize that to keep an eye on your health, whether it's to pay for care to get you back to recovery if you're ill, or even before that, if you want to have a wellness check, you can have the company pay for that on your behalf, and there is no NIC and no BIK costs associated with that. Also, if you're thinking about what's your retirement look like, taking stock, you can spend up to £500 a year with a professional IFA who can do a cash flow modeling for you, or a review of where your current pensions are at. Maybe they'll, certainly the IFAs we use will know about SSAS savvy advisors who can help you understand that and give you a stock take on, well, what is your business looking like, and what is the pension to support that looking like as well. EV, one of my favorites right now. Obviously, the world is changing, isn't it, from a green point of view, and more cars will become electric vehicles in the future. And so, you know, I'm delighted. I think it's the 20th of July. I think I'll put a smile on my face, like the picture there, as I take delivery of my Jaguar I-Pace electric vehicle, all paid for by the company. I don't think I'll be going on the beach anyway, but a nice picture of it. And that's an incredible value, which the no benefit in kind costs this year, 1% next year. I'll live with that, compared to very expensive benefit in kind costs that have previously been experienced, which is why this is the first year ever in my business life that I'm leasing a car for an electric vehicle, where pretty much everything is paid for by the taxman. And that put a smile on my face. I don't know about you. Okay, so as I wrap up, and hopefully, you know, maybe some time for a couple of questions. If you would like to get some free resources, just type in, or just go to that landing page, actually, as you can see on the page, So /draw-drive. Then you'll get some videos which describe the power in more detail of the director's pension or SAS, a little guide we've written on relevant life, and the option for a free consultation, probably about half an hour, with me or my team, when you can talk about anything I've spoken to today, whether it's you want to look at your retirement, you want to talk about any aspect really of building wealth as a busy business owner. So you take at least half an hour out of your day, have a slurp of coffee with me, virtually or in reality in due course, and hopefully gain some value to be able to draw money from your business to create a lifestyle and a future life that doesn't depend entirely on your business. And hopefully on another opportunity I could speak of, I can show you how you can create multiple streams of recurring income inside your business, so that the triple whammy of recurring income, not working, not being dependent on you, and having an incredibly powerful niche of the three things that I always advocate for business owners to be thinking about on their journey to make their business support their wealth, as well as the wider issues I've shared with you today. Peter, I hope that's been useful. Happy to dive in my Zen-like state with any comments or questions, or I'll just take an early bath if I'm not needed and get on with my day. But hopefully you found that useful and of some value to your community.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. One of our listeners has got a few points he's raised, which are in the chat box, which you should be able to see. Are you happy if I just unmute him to have a quick run through of his questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you can dive in before me, I'm happy with that. Do you want to take back over the screen so that you're in control? And you could send that link out again, Peter, right?
Which link?
The link there.
Yeah, excellent. Brilliant. So lots of great comments coming in. But Brian, who works in financial services, had a few points. I don't have control of it. So if you can open up the attendees, or give it back, I think you just give me back control. Have you? No.
I've stopped sharing my screen, so you just take control when you want.
Host.
How do I do that then?
Then you click on the dots by my name.
There you go, sir.
You can make me the host.
There you go.
Super. And
right, so some chat box stuff, you say. Let me have a look at that.
If I allow Brian to talk, then he works in financial services, so he's got a fair clue, but he's got a few questions raised. So Brian, you should be in a position where you can talk.
Mr. Hill, I've seen your face you've seen your name many times.
Good morning, everyone. So just for so people are aware, my background is in financial services, 15 years, advising thousands of clients. So obviously my approach is probably more technical than most. So it's probably, and Kevin doesn't have a huge amount of time to talk about really some very, very detailed and technical subjects that take years and years to really get behind. The government seems to spend all its time making layer upon layer of simplification for everybody, which makes it challenging. But if I can just build on what Kevin said earlier, that pensions aren't by any means always tax-free at all. So for instance, if you die after the age of 75, it's not tax-free to the beneficiaries. 3/4 of the pension is not tax-free. So it is subject to inheritance tax in certain circumstances. And the lifetime allowance tax charge means it can be taxed at 55% or even more if you exceed that. So I just want to burst that bubble, I'm afraid, that it's tax-free. Again, pensions are very, very useful tools in people's investments and their portfolio and their arsenal, and they need to be considered amongst other things. But they are there for a reason usually, which is either to provide an income when you stop working or to provide a legacy. But it's really important to understand that if the government's offering something which looks good, there'll be a side to it which is not so good. And so the tax part of pensions is certainly is quite complex, but I would have to, I'm afraid, Kevin, take issue about the always tax-free. There's many instances where it's not, and that's why it's important for everyone to take, if they're thinking about doing something with their pensions, is to take advice from an independent financial advisor who is, they've done some research on, and I'm going to meet a few. The other point about this, and again, I have properties as well, and so I'm a landlord, and many of my clients do. One of the problems with property, or which I think is where one of the pillars that Kevin was talking about is it can be super useful. You know, having a property and a pension can be brilliant from many. There's no capital gains tax on that when you come to sell it. You can rent it off yourself. There's no income tax on it. There's huge numbers of advantages to it. But for every advantage, we also have to really think about, there must be at least one disadvantage for every advantage. So for instance, illiquidity. You can't cash in as you could with a standard investment. You can't cash it in. You can't do anything. For instance, we had a client recently who their portfolio was invested in property funds. And he wanted to cash his pension in and couldn't, because the surveyors couldn't get aid. So they didn't release his funds. So they're very illiquid. It's very illiquid. And you also, the challenge going forward with that is that you've got a massive concentration of your money, massive concentration. So in a typical portfolio, you'd invest in one company might be, say, 1.5% of your entire portfolio. You invest in a property, it's going to be 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100% of your portfolio. So it's a massive increased risk. So on the one side, Kevin's absolutely right. You've got some really great advantages with this, but be under no illusion, it's a high risk strategy which you need to go into with eyes wide open. It's not a golden wand, and it lacks diversification, lacks access to funds, and I've seen it time and time again where people can come unstuck with this. So certainly not saying that Kevin's wrong on that. I would never do that. But I'm saying that there are aspects to this which mean Kevin's absolutely right. You need that education. Mark Stokes' book I've read, which is very good, a really good thing to familiarise yourself with. But don't let the tail wag the dog on this. Don't let the tail wag the dog. You may find that you're going into something which is much higher risk than you otherwise might need. And if I might just finish off by saying our relevant life policies plans can be really, really useful. Again, we've got them. We often recommend them. They can be a little bit limited, just because it's, probably Kevin, like you, like me, I take minimum salary plus dividends, but it's only based on, an RLP is based on your PAYE, not your dividends usually. So it's limited to usually about $250,000 that you can get. Still, it's $250,000 that's tax deductible, which is great. Unfortunately, though, when a company stops, so does the RLP. You have to take it on personally. So there's a lot more to go into that, and I appreciate Kevin taking time to share this morning. And Kevin knows me from various different groups that I belong to and that he belongs to as well. That I'm not backwards and coming forwards when I see things that need to be said, as in this case, that for every plus, there's at least one minus that we need to take into account when we're talking to people about their wealth, if you like, and I hope that helps.
So I think, in summary, I think a lot of what Brian was saying was in agreement with the direction, but the level of risk, I think, is something which I think people need to make sure they go into with their eyes open.
It's significantly, it can be significantly more risky. It can be dangerous in the wrong hands. I think Kevin will agree with me on that. It can be dangerous in the wrong hands.
So can a business, of course.
Yeah.
So Brian, I thank you for the balance, and like everything, there's opportunities and there are dangers, and this is the very essence of being a business owner. And I think, you know, while thanking you for the balance, it's appropriate for me to say that the purpose of my presentation was to inform, to educate to a certain degree, and a little of entertainment, rather than being a very detailed treatise for the purpose of encouraging people to take a specific form of action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never advocated any action in this. So, but I think you've provided a healthy balance, Brian, and I thank you for the contribution.
You're welcome. And I hope that, you know, it's a really interesting thing, SAS. Like you said, it's something that's been around. How long has it been around for? 10 years? 12? Oh, yeah, long. Yeah, long. And so few people know about it. And it's a superb tool in the right hands. And not enough business owners take time to work out how they can best extract themselves from their business.
Okay.
Excellent. So I think the underlying theme there is the level of risk needs to be balanced with the time taken to do due diligence and make sure that you're going into it with your eyes open. I think everyone would agree with that.
Just the same as being in business in many respects, Peter. You know, would you say that being in business is more risky than being in a job? Well, you could balance that and say, on the one hand, you know, there's job security, but on the other hand, you're trading time for money. If you create a business that you can genuinely make it work without you, you can create recurring income and create life-changing sums of money. It could be the best wealth plan ever. However, there are risks along the way, particularly if the business doesn't do that. And these are the very essence of life decisions that we have to make. And I'm not advocating that people should go into business and give up jobs. And I'm not advocating people should do any one of the things that I mentioned today, but just open their mind to the opportunity to explore that, whether they explore that with me, whether they explore with Brian, whoever they explore it with. And certainly I would echo one of Brian's other points, actually, which was, you know, talk to people and see who you resonate with, you know, because not everybody's going to have a slightly different point of view, and life is about getting points of view from others that helps you shape your own.
Excellent. So at that point, thank you, Brian, for creating the balance. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us, and I suppose giving everyone that ability to begin to step back and look at the future elements coming through. And the draw model's quite clear and simple. I think it's backed up by that element of actually just make sure you get relevant advice and make sure you know what you're stepping into, and that applies to most things. So I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything there that's concerned. Just make sure you do your due diligence, make sure you balance your risk. Risk is risk. Simple as that.
Would you mind, Peter, if I just added one final bit, which is one thing that Kevin quite rightly said, is that when you go and see an IFA, there's no fiduciary duty for an IFA to work on to your best interest, which is bizarre. There should be. An IFA will, as I am, will invariably look to gather funds under management, which basically means the more money you have, the more interested they are. And so they're not really interested in property. They don't have that experience and expertise that Kevin was talking about. And there's a few of us that do, but most don't. And so many IFAs will be will advise against it without taking into account that someone like Kevin or someone like me has a much higher risk profile than the average person, and very prepared to do that. So also when you're talking to an IFA, bear in mind that most IFAs will be looking to secure as much of your funds under their umbrella as possible. And so that's why it's important then to take stock of, you know, IFAs are not the fiduciary, always a fiduciary trusted advisor. And that's why you need to go and get that education and look at different aspects and look at the way different people work as well. So just to give further balance as well, IFAs are not always the answer by any stretch. And I think Kevin would agree with me on that as well, hopefully.
Excellent. So overall, it's a case of building out the balance. I think what Brian's just pointed out there is actually a lot of the IFAs actually won't help you to create that balance into property as well, which they probably should be. So it's an interesting area. Lots of research needs to be done, lots of balance. Certainly worth having conversations with relevant people to make sure you're doing what's right for you. So brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us. And next week, Adrian Webster from Glenbear Pirates, absolutely awesome speaker. I love the fact that when I phoned him up and I said, how's it going? He said, brilliant, but I'm a motivational speaker, so I have to say that. So that's going to be exciting. Beyond that, these sessions are run with East West PR and Jim James as well, who joins us on a regular basis. And he's just developing his whole SPEAK PR program, which is a communications program. And we'll be getting him to talk us through that in a couple of weeks' time as well, with some amazing tools to really help small businesses to push forward. So at that point, I'm going to say thank you so much, Robert, for joining us. Andy, can you read the comments in the? Is there anything we need to answer? Because it's a bit small, so I end up looking at the screen.
Yeah, Peter said very interesting. Thank you, Kevin. The Jim James mentioned the Wealth Builders community on Facebook, so you can also discuss issues there. I'm sure you can find it if you type in Kevin's name or Wealth Builders. Roger mentioned selecting partners in SSAS schemes is particularly important. In joint schemes with spouses and your children's spouses can be difficult to unwind if you need to get the assets out. So essentially it's just pointing out that you need to be careful who you pick as a partner. Yeah. And Ben said, thank you, Kevin, very informative and impressively presented.
Brilliant. So with impressive presenting being at the forefront, we'll say thank you very much, and we'll see you same time next week.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you, Peter. Bye-bye.
Bye now.